that company has thousands of information already available, and the AI agents kind of just work through to absorb all of it. The people coming in first time can definitely just kind of have a lot of that information at their disposal. Things like that, I think, are pretty good starting points to look at who's leading in this industry, where it's going.
Welcome to Marketing by Design, where you and I learned from our favorite founders and marketers on how they built their success and told their stories by design. I am your host, Andy Milligan. Let's get started. Hello, what is happening, people, and welcome back to another powerful episode of Marketing by Design. Who you just heard was the one and only Micah Lotemo of Panzi Digital. This is episode 131 of the podcast, and Micah is someone that I've known for a couple months, and he's taught me a little bit about what he's doing in his own business when it comes to AI and automation. There's probably a lot of buzzwords that you guys have heard about running through your circles on LinkedIn, on YouTube, maybe starting to dabble in it for a little bit for your own, as I have. But this is something that Micah is starting to add value to his client base. And I'm always, and sort of my general inclination with the podcast as a whole, is I'm always trying to see what's on the cutting edge, where is the puck headed, how can I start to act on these things and make sure that I'm not falling behind. And I think in general, the AI adoption curve is a lot slower than a lot of people would let on. But it's always good to be ahead of these things and maybe start to implement one of these things for your own business. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. Micah is trying a ton of things when it comes to AI and automation. He started to get some really good results for his clients. And yeah, it was a really good conversation, a really good chat on how you can start to do so as well. So if you guys like what you hear from Micah, make sure you go and check him out over at Panzi Digital or head over to his LinkedIn. That'll be in the description. But without further ado, let's jump right on in. That's enough for me. But before we do, I have a short little resource that I want you guys to take me up on. And it's the highest converting website's visual swipe file. I shout this out on every episode, but it is genuinely one of the most valuable things in my business because it's where we start every website project. It really helps to already know what's working in web design. And before we start ideating and making wireframes, we always reference the highest converting sections that are working for our own clients. So I put those all into a Notion swipe file for you guys to download. That'll be in the first link in the description, and I encourage you to take me up on that if you want some inspiration for your website. I cannot recommend it enough. But without further ado, you're listening to episode 131 of Marketing by Design, and this is Micah Lotemo of Panzi Digital by Design.
Just talking about in general with n8n, you have to be a little techie to touch n8n. You gotta be at least somewhat technical enough to be able to get in there, play around with it, set up different tools, get everything up to gear. And it's not as if like you're, I guess, like Zapier kind of platform where the automations are kind of set up in a way where it's pretty easy to kind of click things around and drag and drop, create recipes and automations. Yeah, n8n is a little more complex, and I think like it involves somebody who is somewhat well adaptive to switching from bouncing around from software to software to software to software. And I think that's what makes tech is like you only get you become comfortable with certain softwares, and then it's like you have to be super adaptive fairly quickly to learn a new software and just get it on the fly. Like just become good at it and like learn it really quick. And that's been literally like all these years that I've been at least kind of been in this space is you got to be super good at just adopting new technology, new softwares, and learning it really quickly, and then learning how to use it.
Yeah, I think it's a big overcome people have before even getting started with any kind of like automation, because it's so boring in the beginning, right? It's not fun to like tool apart these pieces, and most of the time you're probably failing at it. Like you're just running through like test sequences, and it just feels really messy and like a bunch of digital duct tape going on. But I'm telling you, once you have like that first moment where it actually is productive and it helps your business and you start to see how much time it can actually save with you, it makes a big difference. That's kind of where the buy-in starts. But I think a lot of people, Micah, don't actually get there. Like they don't stay in it long enough. They don't learn enough about it to actually make it effective. Um, and even like n8n and make.com, they don't make it as code free or as hands off, self implementation friendly as it can be. Like you still have to know, I think, to make it like actually get the 1% of results. You still have to know a little bit of JSON. You have to know how to parse data correctly, and you have to know all the tools, right? Like you have to know
Mm.
how to, eventually APIs and making everything work.
Integrations. Yeah.
Yep.
Mm.
And part of it too is like the not like even the non-technical aspect of thinking, okay, more of a holistic business sense. How does this automation actually make a difference in your business? Like, what's the most productive thing we could be doing? Identifying that is a big part before even looping in the technical side too. Um, so what got you into like automation and stuff like that to begin with? I know we talked a little bit about it off camera, but what's like your genesis of getting started in that, and how much of time are you dabbling in that now between that and the agency?
Yeah. So I think the idea of like AI employees is pretty appealing to business owners now, especially in tech. It
Uh-huh.
is pretty interesting to play around with the idea that is it possible to actually cut out um, an employee and actually implement an AI tool, an AI employee to help with the workflow and save time not only for them but also cut or slash some form of cost on my end. So um, yeah, I think the idea kind of started to spread more so after I think OpenAI came out, and then there was Claude, Anthropic, I guess you can call them as well, and they kind of came out and kind of started to. I think there's these different levels of ChatGPT, and each level somehow it allowed the AI to be able to do multiple things simultaneously. And the
Uh-huh.
more capability that you were giving, the more data that we were feeding OpenAI, the more it allowed them to have enough data to kind of work off of. And some things were things related to text. So I feel really bad for copywriters now because there's a lot of ways that AI is kind of depleted a little bit of their value that they were bringing to the table for companies
Yeah.
and their work and their skill levels. Um, so that's, I think, a field that if you were very much into SEO, writing content, summarizing content or whatever, paralegals, looking at documents after documents after documents, well,
Uh-huh.
it's like you can implement an AI system to kind of just oversee a lot of that information and quickly just spot all the holes in what you wrote. And also it just digs through data so much faster than you and does research. And so those ideas kind of appeal to me for getting work done faster and also being an SEO and looking into articles and blogs and things like that were pretty interesting to me. And I said, well, because at the beginning there's a little bit of this that kind of ties together, which technology is nothing but just duct taped solutions after solutions after
Uh-huh.
solutions. That's really what tech is. And so, SEO kind of had these tools in the beginning, which was a tool called Phrase, and also there was Spark,
Mm-hmm.
Sparktoro or something like that. There was
Sparktor, yeah.
Jasper
It's a
AI,
Yeah, it's a
yeah,
brand
and they were
efficiency
like
tool, yeah.
yeah, there was like, and of course, Grammarly as well was in the picture. So there were a lot of these, I think, AI sort of agents, AI tools, generative AI, that were slowly being implemented into software and looking at your text, looking at what you wrote, and helping you figure out a way to write it better. But then there was like, OpenAI came out and it was like, well, you know what? All that stuff can be written by us. You could just
Uh-huh.
on the fly, you can just tell me what you want to write about, tell me how the word count, and I could do it for you, and dig through thousands of data points to give you why this is better and competitive, and it'll help you rank a lot better. So that seems appealing to a tech company. That seems appealing to a company that does SEO, and so that's kind of, I think, a little bit what sparked the interest with AI employees. But AI employees only has evolved to become AI employees after you utilize so many AI solutions, and now you're like, what else can I do with it? And well, it could become your employee. You could, you know, it could become your executive, summarizing emails or writing emails for you on your behalf, to, tell it to follow up with emails for sales purposes, write up an email in a way that it's somewhat not too salesy, but just hits on, all cylinders for what you talked about from the call. Um, the other thing actually I want to point out too was you had an executive or an assistant to take notes for you, and that was the thing back then, right? On during meetings,
Mm-hmm.
and technically they kind of did away with you having the need to take notes altogether because
Yeah.
I have a friend, really good buddy of mine out in Chicago, and he had like this he had this thing in his phone. I forgot what it was, but it was connected through some sort of automation. But anyways, so while him and I were talking on the phone, it was actually grabbing all of the. It was kind of like a sales call, not sales call, but like an important meeting to kind of get information that was vital to our project.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, he wasn't going to get everything from his point of view, but he used this automation tool to listen to our call, and it grabbed everything that we talked about, summarized it, and then after we finished, he sent me that summarization transcript, that transcript of our call, and it summarized all the bullet points for everything,
Mm-hmm.
like from, hey, this was the intro, and the conclusion, and then some action items after that. And I thought that was pretty wicked. But
Mm-hmm.
AI also is doing away with needing people to sit down in meetings to talk about who's taking notes. Did anybody take the notes from last week?
Mm-hmm.
AI kind of did away with that, and so yeah, it summarizes the meetings for you. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
I think a lot of people they get started with the tools like that. I think a big thing that a lot of business owners and a lot of founders don't really do as well is like the implementation, like the getting past the shiny object syndrome of like, yeah, now we have this stuff. Like, how do we actually use it? And I think a lot of it that plays into the automation is teaching you how do you make it work in other parts of your business and kind of taking that off your plate because even there's always going to be some manual work to some extent when you have a body of data that you're working with, you have an input, you have a transcript. How do you actually apply that is a lot of times the gray area and the black box that people are trying to square because we're not used to having so much like humans. Our context window is infinitely smaller than all the stuff that we now have access to in terms of you know transcripts, data, customer information, industry knowledge, research, recordings, like all this stuff. um if you can somehow put it to work for you and have other people doing that, other, you know, automations, tools, whatever they might be, on your behalf, you're going to be a lot more set up to actually take advantage of it. Um, what do you think some of like it's kind of a high level question, but like, what do you think some of the biggest misconceptions that people have about it now are? Like, I think a part of it is a lot of people don't actually understand the ROI and how worth it is to have it there. But what are some misconceptions you think might some people might have about you hear the term AI automation and how the role it plays for businesses? What do you think is the first thing that comes from mind of them that might not be 100% accurate?
yeah, I think some misconceptions could be that it's going to take our jobs.
Uh,
That's a little bit of the big one, the big scare. Um, but I did read an article that was related to Deloitte, and or not actually. I think more so consulting companies like Deloitte, and the need for big financial companies to do profitability strategies, to financial reporting, right? And if you think about how efficient and accurate an AI actually is compared to a human, it's almost completely perfect. Because eventually the AI, you have to, the way that it's developed is it's developed. You train it to be as accurate as possible by feeding it data after data after data after data, and eventually you kind of could sort of in some ways become hands off.
Uh,
So I would say that there are, I think, just like in any industry, tech always somehow kind of just creeps in and definitely disrupts, you know. Warby Parker as an example of kind of disrupting the eyewear industry. That's kind of an example there to many other examples for what technology can actually do and disrupt. But that would be, I think, just a component of what's the most. I think, and tech people kind of think about that too, is like, what's the most ripe thing to for tech companies are just salivating at the idea of, what is the thing that we could disrupt next. And
uh,
I think that the need, for example, whoever is on board, or an employee that does take notes for the company, and that you're kind of done in a way for your what you contribute and bring to the table. If you're a really good research assistant, your need is kind of not there anymore. And so I think that there are ways for you to kind of chip away at little things that technically AI can kind of take out. If you're useful for scheduling things on a calendar for an attorney, or for the CEO, whoever. This is kind of like, I think it starts a little bit of the more simple problem solving solutions, where it's pretty repetitive, right? It's like super repetitive. It kind of stays the same. And if you put it in the notes or you teach the AI, it typically can kind of just start to kind of become hands off. So I would say
uh,
things like that can definitely be scary. I think for some people who that is kind of like the thing that they do for the company. Um and if, for example, people like us in this field are learning about all these things, and we see that we can provide that as a solution to a company, that's kind of like the scary thing is, once a company sees that, wait a minute, I can implement this. Wait a minute,
uh,
we have figured out a way for us to solve our own issues. There's a way for us to go out into the world and tell other people, hey, listen, if you need the solution, we've already figured it out. We've already cracked the code. It's saving us hundreds of hours, X and Y, X amount of hours. You know what? We can implement the system inside your workflow, inside whoever your project manager is, whatever your tech guy, and we can make things more seamless and a lot easier. Um, Sometimes there's a little bit of a rigidity to change, and big companies, big
uh,
corporations, they typically don't want to change, and they want to keep things how they are. And that's sometimes how you kind of fall, you kind of fall back when other companies or your competitors are very tech embracing and technology
uh,
embracive. And so I think sometimes those are kind of some components that are the issue there. Is I think people who are not ready for change, which is our big corporations, because it takes a lot longer, so much process to come in and figure out their problems, to implement a solution. And there are some who are pretty agile and can just change really quickly and adapt to the new environment. And
uh.
those are usually the ones who are set up to succeed for like the long term. It's just they're more adaptive and agile.
Yeah, that's so good, man. I think especially people that do what we do in our industry, there's a lot of enamorment for like the old way things were done, and that creates that resistance to change. There's like this romantic view of like whether what SEO used to be, what design used to be, and people are just so set up in what their old workflows, what their old way of adding value was, that they are resistant to change. And anything that threatens that identity of this is what I used to do is inherently, we're just going to ignore that and shove that down. um, I think we're in this unique positions. I have a really good podcast, and I just listened to a couple of days ago. But it was this WordPress agency owner, and they like a lot of us kind of see like where the puck is headed, for lack of better terms, in terms of okay, we have this advantage, we have a client base, we have an established business. Um, in terms of where the value actually lies, it's moving further and further away from the non-directly ROI generating activities, right? And things like definitely copywriting,
Mm-hmm.
a little bit to the design front, more and more every day with a lot of the builder platforms that are coming out, like Bolt, Lovable, stuff like that that are starting to be able to take visual aggregation of information the same way that has been able to with transcripts and text, and actually create something proprietary and unique from it. I think a lot of people, and it's starting to slowly kind of eke away at those. Say you start in the center with like the most highest ROI generating activity, where it's like, okay, vending machine, put in $1, get a return out. Like that's like the very center of, and this is very overly simplified, of like what marketing is, productively done in its best form. And then as you start to go further and further outside of that circle, you see things like copywriting, design, some of the examples I just mentioned, that it's harder to circle that square. It's a less of a direct path. I think what AI is doing is slowly sort of narrowing that circle to, okay, what is the most tried and true, reliable method of how can I put in the marketing dollar here and generate the marketing outcome here?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and whether or not, and no matter, and this is just a general tried and true principle of business as a whole, nobody is going to be able to do everything in their business. So, especially in marketing, I think you have to be cognizantly moving towards where the puck is headed in terms of where the value lies. And people that are overly attached to, you know, I think you can still center your experience and your unique positioning and value props around what your experience was, but you have to find a way to make it enabled by what's going on now. Um, I had a we had have you ever heard of Dale Bertrand,
No, 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 I have not.
SEO?
Yeah,
Okay,
no, I haven't.
he owns a he was on the show yesterday, but he owns a company called Fire and Spark, and he does like 30 conferences a year just talking about Gen AI and SEO. And he told me that 50% of his time now is researching like niche communities, and he even started talking about AI and automation, like how they're using scrapers for like niche Reddit communities and aggregating information, sending keyword data that is happening like in forums, Slack channels, online communities,
Mm-hmm.
and then creating content that's directly answering questions that are coming straight from people's mouths.
Interesting.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
and you start to see like where these similarities are happening, right? I think there's, and sort of going back to what I was originally saying, is that I think people like you and I kind of see where the puck is headed in terms of, okay, we have a client base, we have a foothold in the industry, an advantage that a lot of people who probably are starting out don't have. But, and you've probably been through this experience too, where you do like a web design or you build a website for someone or even do SEO, and you just immediately you're exposed to this business and you're like, okay, 5 to 10 things come to mind right away that I could add value or fix or just, and
Yeah.
it's not to their extent. They're just not, and part of it is knowing what a good business looks like and how to be efficient. But like we're probably able to identify, what 3 to 4 of those things are that would just add a huge ROI that would probably blow their minds, maybe even more so than the service that they came to us with.
Yeah.
Um, so what is your process? You had to say like, what's the 301 version of how you can make a suggestion like that? Because there's always sort of this awkward position where you're like, okay, you hired me for this one thing, but how can I, slowly start to offer, a recommendation to, hey, maybe there's, this automation you could set up or this platform you could be appearing on that's going to add a lot of value. Do you approach it as your company and position it as an offer? Or is it something that you kind of introduce, ease into, and lean more on the relationship side?
Yeah, I think definitely building out a really solid relationship with the client at the beginning, because I think and there's Alex Harmozy, who is just blowing up. I was listening to that guy just yesterday. Alex
What's his
Armorzi has
name?
this kind of like this idea of at least these values and systems that he believes in, and when you can make the offer to upsell them to how long you should wait before you go back and actually
Huh.
upsell them again. He has like these belief principles, and one of them is like he has like these four time life cycles, four life cycles of like at the beginning, right down the middle, and like right before the end, and the end, I guess, the end is not so pretty, but yeah, different touch points on when to actually um a little bit of his model is, he goes out and finds businesses that um, need somebody to come in and double their sales,
Uh-huh.
figure out the holes in their business because their offering is so small, and that he somehow is able to triple the offering by just somehow upselling tons of just these products that they are
Huh.
not taking advantage of. And so he might bring in like all these offers of like, well, if you do this now, you save 20%, right? I mean, how many times have you been like in that sales cycle for a software, and it upsells you on you can save 20% by signing up for right now as for a lifetime, or like for a whole year, you can knock off 20%, right? And so,
Yeah.
they give you that, and you give that software up front, the entire year cost, right? Because you, in your mind, you thought that you saved 20%, but that's just a fancy way to kind of word it. But the truth is, we don't really know how, what's the cost to actually operate that software. We don't really know, but that's a
Uh-huh.
huge upsell opportunity to save 20% just because you bought for the whole year. So um, I think that from a website point of view, as a website builder designer, usually people see the value right offhand when they can see that you have done other designs before, and that's the appeal, right? Is the appeal comes in first, where they feel like you can solve their issues. Their website really is not up to par to their competitor or whatever. And so, you come in as this fresh face. You are either boutique or you have a team, whatever. And so you either got a strong referral from another person, so it's guaranteed to definitely close, or you are just somebody who came in cold and you're talking to them, first as a first timer.
Uh-huh.
And that's usually a harder sell. You got to prove yourself a little bit. But yeah, so I think that the upsell, I think, for providing other solutions, I think it does come in with, definitely, I think, give them what they want, give them a good service, give them a good, I think, project experience from, start to finish, and ask for that review. Because you want to make sure that you definitely get that. Um, a little bit of some time passes, everything works. They're not coming to you left and right and saying, "Hey, actually, I checked it on this device," or "Hey, actually, somebody told me this." So that tends to happen sometimes. But if
Uh-huh.
everything actually goes according to plan, I think, like having just a conversation at some point, if they do reach out related to something, or you actually find an opportunity that could benefit their business, such as, for example, we have some clients that are lawyers, law firms, and we see the benefit of them using AI chatbots. Why? Because they could be capturing leads through that chat feature, and maybe
Huh.
some people are a little are not as adaptive to use the contact form, but some people might be more comfortable using the chat feature. And so we are going to look around and be like, okay, so 8 out of 10 law firms are using this chat feature. Listen, you don't have it, and I think it'll do wonders for you. Maybe this is a good another way for you to test your lead count, and maybe other people might be more inclined to use the chat feature. And so that value add, they, especially if you know how to back it up by data and proving to them that this can work, then it's usually pretty easy to make the sale on that upsell, right? Because you built the relationship, you already have the relationship established because you did a good job, first of all. Two, you have
Uh-huh.
a rapport. And secondly, when you do reach back out, they have no problem hiring you again because you did a good job on the first
Yeah.
project. And so yeah, it's usually pretty easy to go in and look for other opportunities to get them to hire you on something else.
Yeah. It's a really good. You explained that really well, man. Seriously. And I think part of it is, and I've heard this analogy made before, but giving it's the same principles apply to whether or not they work with you. So if you're generally a good person, you're looking out for their business and you want the best for them, sale aside and like subsidiary services aside, you want clients to have the most efficient route, cost productive route to solving their problem. And if you're not the person for that, then you recommend something else. It's just the same to where you're doing it with something else that you offer.
Yeah.
It's sort of
And
this
I've
idea
often,
of go
sorry to
ahead.
even cut you off. I've often
No,
actually
you're
even
good.
heard that um, it's easier to upsell a current client than actually it's actually easier to upsell and maintain a current client than to actually get a new one. That's
Way
the
easier.
wild idea there to think about. Much
Yeah,
easier.
and that's something that any established business, not even established, people who've just been around longer have. It's an advantage that startups don't have. And it helps you kind of overcome that antiquated, but you have to be adaptive and willing to change, right? Like that's the whole underlying, I think, principle of this too. And a quote I've heard is that you give people what they think, what they need, and not what they want sometimes. So they might come to you for something specific, and they think they need something else, but what do they actually? What's the most effective way of actually solving that problem? And a lot of times, it not might not be design, it might not be copywriting, it might not be SEO, it might not be what you started with. But if you're that trusted resource, you can be the person to say, like, hey man, like, great websites, it's going to wow people, but it's not actually, that in isolation is not going to, drive pipeline. It's not going to integrate with the CRM. It's not going to be your whole marketing engine. And that's a conversation I've certainly had before, but just seeing how the parallels and how you kind of piece that together there, you can definitely see, how it can especially be in the picture moving forward. So I want to go more back in on kind of how you got started in tooling around with this. Like, can you remember like the very first sort of automation, leveraging like an LLM to do probably something very simple, um, that you sort of started with that maybe started to close that feedback loop of like, wow, this is this is where the puck is headed. Was it a while before you were kind of tooling around in it? Like, what was the first one that you set up that sort of got that buy-in for you?
Yeah. So I would say I was a part of at the beginning stages. I was a part of this like marketing program with so during COVID era, pre-COVID era, right before COVID, just kind of was just hit. There were a lot of these boot camps popping up left and right,
Mm-hmm.
and these boot camps were related to like learning to code from left to, from the bottom up. And then after that, they had this really cool sort of promise, which was, we'll teach you to code, and after that, we have partners, and they're looking for tech. They're looking for people to hire in tech, and it was like this. I forgot the terminology there, which was um, you sign up, but there's like this agreement somehow that you kind of you agree to that later on that you'll pay back the percentage of whatever the education cost was, or the boot camp cost
Yeah.
was. So you were attached to this agreement, and once you got hired, that's when you started paying back the boot camp. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it was a pretty cool promise. And
It's a good business model. Yeah.
yeah, it really was. It really was. So they taught you, everything, front and back, code, and just got you started into tech. There was a huge boom during that COVID timeframe where a lot of people definitely pivoted from especially hospitality industry into
Mm-hmm.
tech. There was a huge boom in that. And so yeah, so made a lot of friends in that boot camp. And then in that boot camp there was this software that we played around with, and it was Zapier. Zapier was at that time not a lot of people kind of knew about it. It wasn't at the forefront as the automation tool. It wasn't, but yeah. So it was pretty simple. We just set up kind of like this weather reminder in the proximity area of where you live geographically, um, integrated it with the weather app API, and integrated with your cell phone number to shoot you a text if it's going to rain, the weather predictions, and yeah, in a certain time or whatever, and it did.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that was pretty wild because the next morning, the next that week or so, I did get a prediction that there's like 30% chance of rain or whatever, and I thought that was pretty wild. But that was kind of, I guess we could say, just getting your feet wet in AI right there, and later on, it definitely kind of sparked the interest to figure out what to do with AI, even though now I think we have just kind of started to implement in our company a little bit of some AI workflows to make our jobs easier. And so it's been interesting. One interesting part of what we've done too with in the past is, and this is a cool thing, which is AI agent, AI characters.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I'm sure you kind of heard about that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, AI characters are a pretty interesting concept
Mm-hmm.
with just taking a human image and somehow allowing the data to use that image and being capable of, mimicking, manipulating facial features and being able to kind of push out voice, and you can customize the voice to sound differently, different
Mm-hmm.
languages and whatnot. One popular tool that we've used is Hey Gen.
Mm-hmm.
And there's now more startups actually that I've seen the legs behind AI characters, and so more and more are actually popping up that are Hey Gen competitors. Um,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I mean, I can kind of see some a little bit of a future that's also kind of ripe for disruption, which would be the movie industry. Just ripe for disruption right there with AI characters and all and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
Huge potential there because Google rolled out Veo. I think it's Veo, I want to say,
Mm-hmm.
um, visual beautiful cinematography, 4K imaging of anything you could possibly think of a landscape area where you want to go. You can dream it, you can write it, whatever. If you can write it, you can dream it. It can be made into a cinematic sort of a video. And so you have to kind of think of like, if you want to make AI movies or whatever, I think it's very much capable of doing that because
Mm-hmm.
I've seen AI music videos, and I've seen, Trump and Obama or whatever and Bush actually sitting at a campfire, and and Trump has the guitar. AI has unlimited potential to what it can do. I've seen Cristiano Ronaldo hanging out with Messi, which is unreal to think about, but it's the ceiling is pretty high, I think, for where AI can actually go. And to just to kind of loop back around to how I got started with it, who knew where it would be right now? But yeah, just weather predicting weather predictions was kind of how I got started, and that's where it is now, and it's wild, really wild.
Yeah. No, that's really cool, man. And like even you mentioned Zapier as like a starting place, like that's and I remember using Zapier kind of for, like at the Genesis, like back in college. And it looks totally different than it does now. Like if you go and look at the interface, like nowadays Zapier is so AI enabled, like you have the assistant features that really go in and let you customize it, to what you want it to be. So I think a big virtue signal that people can kind of be on the lookout for is that if the platforms themselves are changing their product to more match, where the puck is headed with this stuff,
Yeah,
I think it's a really
that's a
strong
big
sign that you
signal.
should
Yeah, it's a big signal
probably
for
be
you to
learning
start.
about it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so true. It's so true.
So man, like give me some action items. Like what are say I listen to this episode and I want to, get started somehow. I either want to go the implementation route or I, want to know how I can make this more personalized to add value to my unique business. What are the steps to making that happen? Is it getting in touch with someone who's an expert in your industry who make recommendations to take a little bit of tooling around myself? What platform should I be tooling around on? Where should my education be? Give me a little bit of a on the spot roadmap for how I can get started with the stuff.
Yeah, so um recently OpenAI actually released released a new version of OpenAI. I think it was like last week or a couple weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Five.
news to kind of pay attention to is definitely Altman, because
Hmm.
I think that they are on the cusp of just the next, like the next form of where it's going to go, which would be, in my opinion, I think I've heard the term, um, like I think it's object, um,
Uh-huh.
object AI, like or physical AI, if that makes sense. The
Huh.
ability to use AI in a physical sense, um, objects wise, and we've seen a little bit with Optimus, which is Tesla's robots, where at that point it becomes an actual AI that walks and talks, right? And
Hmm.
it's been fed so much data from to execute certain behaviors and just um, human attributes. Um, so I would say to kind of keep tabs on the leading industry leaders with how they have been able to use AI to um, make things better. I did see like downtown while we were going to church, Waymo, which was
Hmm.
a
Yeah.
company, it was a Google backed company. Um, I saw Waymo's cars out on the streets, and I looked in the driver's seat and nobody was in there.
Yeah.
And that was mind boggling to me, that so much so that I recorded the whole entire thing, because that's kind of a little bit of a peek into the future of what's ahead. And so, yeah, so I would say to pay attention, I think, to people who are kind of the standard bearers or leading the pack. And ChatGPT happens to be the first one, and they were the first one to kind of go to market. Um, and then also, Google, I think, is a little behind on AI, in my opinion. I do think that they are pretty behind, and they have been trying to figure out better ways to use their AI engineers to predict and figure out ways to use AI in the best way possible.
Uh-huh.
But Google really kind of struggles to roll out products. It does. It really struggles to roll out products, and they're never really good. And they kind of sometimes actually kill off products a lot of times. So
Uh-huh.
um, yeah, and as far
Interesting.
as implementing any sort of AI solutions into the business, if you are our iPhones kind of do this now, which would be summarization, and also now there's a process where now Apple phones partnered with ChatGPT to allow you to be able to use ChatGPT if you'd like to. That option is there. If you prefer Siri, then you can ask Siri, But now Siri actually now allows you to have that option to say, "Would you like to search this on ChatGPT?" So that's a really, really huge change there. So I would say to look at small things that that you can start to kind of just get your feet wet with AI, which would be definitely summarizing your calls. Make sure you have something that's a AI summarizer that is you implement into the call. It summarizes all your notes. You can go back to those notes. If it's a sales call, hands down, have an AI note taker that can
Uh-huh.
summarize the call, and you can go back and look at all the different points that were given, so that when you can go back on the next call, you can go revert back to what was said there. Second thing would be definitely emails, digging through emails, trying to find whatever you were looking for, implementing some sort of AI agent inside of your email workflow to make things easier to find, summarizing an email, writing up an email, suggesting an email because it learns how you write would be definitely to implement something like that. Um, as far as if you're kind of like into ticketing sort of thing, um, people in the IT industry for ticketing. I mean, uh, that field in and of itself is definitely, I think, a little redundant to have someone to request or have somebody to have handling tickets now. It's kind of a little redundant, but
Uh-huh.
humans can still tell that if I'm talking to a human or not. We can kind of still tell actually, but I would say if you're in that industry, there's AI agents that are able to help you to kind of take tickets and assign them to the proper person, or on the back end, summarize the issues for that person to be able to implement the correct solutions. And I think, in my opinion as well, if you're a big organization and you have like a magnitude of data and information files to go through, give that sort of task to an AI agent, to have a built-in AI agent that is able to, you create some sort of archive, right? It's like basically a library that anybody has. First of all, a first-time associate, somebody who just came in, a rookie, doesn't have all that information at their disposal, and they don't want to go left and right and ask millions of people to, just kind of hit the ground running. Well, it'll be great to have like a database that an AI agent is able to just, if they ask any certain any specific question, because that company has thousands of information already available, and the AI agents kind of just work through to absorb all of it. The people coming in first time can definitely just kind of have a lot of that information at their disposal, and it makes things a lot easier for them not to reach out with stupid questions, for, if you
Uh-huh.
will. So yeah, things like that I think are pretty good starting points to look at who's leading in this industry, where it's going. The Sam Altman already talked about the future of where they're trying to take it, and it's a very electricity consuming heavy product in
Uh-huh.
AI in general, and there are thousands of data centers that are being built right now, and in the future as well. And I think that Meta is doing quite a lot with AI as well. They're investing, I don't know, billions of dollars in AI engineers, and betting on the future that AI agents, AI in general, is the future of human intelligence. And so, yeah, it is the future, and somehow the more we embrace it, and just starting by small steps, as an calendar, to writing your emails for you, to summarizing meetings, to ticketing systems, to chatbot features, and it goes so far as now being able to have computer vision, right? That's wild to have computer vision, to be able to see what self-driving cars are able to do now. And um, as far as our field with website design, you can almost say in some sense that website design, it has made almost in our ways, in a way, also kind of a little easier if
Uh-huh.
you're able to kind of use it just right. Like, in terms of code, if you can't figure out something that would have taken you back in the day, like I don't know how many hours, long sleepless nights to figure out a solution to code or whatever. Well, the beauty of what AI where is going, ChatGPT, Claude, well, it's now capable of just kind of looking through code for you and helping you solve those JavaScript issues or HTML or CSS, whatever it may be. It's able to solve those issues for you with just a snap of a finger. And I think that that's brilliant to think about that it
Yeah.
has in some ways made our jobs easier to solve problems that were existing. And design, I think that that's a little far away. I think AI is not really meant to design, in my opinion. I think it's too technical. It's very, very
Hmm.
technical, and it's not
Subjective.
quite
Yeah.
there. Yeah, really, really subjective to create design, but it's actually not stopping AI engineers, visionaries from figuring out a solution to implement into the likes of Figma, um,
Uh-huh.
Adobe XD kind of, it's not there anymore for where it was, but because that was the Figma back then. But
Uh-huh.
Figma design tool is becoming, it's changing into allowing you to use AI agents. It's kind of
Uh-huh.
implementing into that workflow of the dashboard. Now it's telling you like you can use this and it'll help you to summarize what kind of design you're looking for. And so that's kind of like you can see little by little like these huge companies, these huge tech companies, they are basically saying like we know where the future is headed. Everybody's asking for it. And so we're going to hire some, engineers to come in and help us to implement some sort of AI into our software because we don't want you to feel like, we're kind of just stuck in the past and our way works better. I think that they are adapting, and if they are, and it's also speaking pretty loudly to say there's some ways that we can kind of start doing the same thing.
Yeah, dude. So good, man. So much of what you just said. Like, I think it's empowering to everyone to just know that there's always, and it's getting easier and easier every single day to do the self implementation route. It's baking its way into a lot of the stuff we already use, um, and encouraging the fulfillment, the people that are in the weeds, the people like you and I that are running their own businesses. We have this great opportunity to try it internally and think, okay, now how can we use this to add value to the people that we've already earned trust with. And it's getting easier and easier to not just get started, but also make it incredibly effective. And I think like for the listeners, like some of the stuff we just talked about today is very 301. So a lot of the things that we can implement ourselves and just getting started, they're effective. But I think honestly, and even to me, it would blow our minds some of the stuff that you can actually make happen when you can implement a very personalized custom solution. And that's kind of the theme without all artificial intelligence is that the value is no longer having the thing. It's how do I make it 100% proprietary and differentiated towards a very specific use case that then just amplifies the value of it. Um, so like all the basic, even for listeners, you might say like, wow, like this seems super simple. Like, okay, we can transcribe notes, we can, automate ticketing, we can do all this stuff that seems simple, which it's still, we don't give ourselves enough credit to how like revolutionary it actually is. But just because it seems so commonplace now, when you have a personalized solution, a more complex one that does multi steps, it has the capability of someone acting almost 100% on your behalf. I think that's where the incredible outsized value and it takes getting started. It takes not just knowing how they work, it takes following the people that are on the cutting edge of it, and eventually investing in someone to either help you or consult and make it a reality for you. Um, but yeah, dude, like super. This is a really good conversation. I'm always trying to learn more about this stuff, and this today is, I'm gonna listen to this one back and start tooling around and seeing what we can make happen. It's an endless well, and I think a lot of people get kind of overwhelmed when there's a lot of opportunity and just don't know where to start. Um, I think we're all kind of in that place with what's out there and how accessible it is. It just takes that spark that starts to fire, and you eventually, probably get carried away with a lot of this. So, man, where can people go to learn more about you, Panzi, everything that you've kind of built and everything you're experimenting with now, if they want to continue the conversation?
Yeah, definitely find us at panzidigital.com, PANZI digital.com. And I'm on LinkedIn, Micah Lotemo. You can find me there. Give me a shout. And love tech and been in it for a while and just always looking forward to playing around and experimenting with different tech because it's just always fun. It's ever evolving.